everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of the Jedi Way. And we are going to be spoiler reviewing episode 5 of Ahsoka. We've all just finished taking 3 cold showers today, recovering from that episode from last night. We got so much to dive into here on the Jedi Way, but let's introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, also known as Rocha Fett, here, joined as always by the great Laura Kelly. Laura, how are you feeling on this post-episode 5 day?
I have ascended, John. I am just on another plane, another galaxy, if you will, with how I feel about this episode. Although I've been a little bit stressed out at work, and get this. Have you ever had to wear like one of those night guards, like those things in your teeth to like keep you from grinding your teeth at night?
Sure. Yes. I've also done the things that you hook into your teeth. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
I broke mine with my jaw. That's how stressed I've been lately. So Ahsoka was like a very welcomed reprieve from just the stress of life. I literally broke my night guard, that hard plastic. I'm out $350 now. So yeah, it's been a week.
Wow. Woof. All right. Well, I'm sorry you broke that. But at least this brought you some kind of peace and calm. The third member of our trio here, Kevin Smets. Kevin, you look like you're Kevin the White right now from the glow coming off you behind you. How are you feeling after episode 5, my man?
Look, there was nothing else in the closet, so she just picked out a white thing. She's not Ahsoka the White. But look at this. This just makes my nerves happy.
Look at
Just wanted to start off like that and say that I absolutely love the episode. Can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dive into it. Of course, as has been going on over the last few weeks, Laura Kelly will lead us into this discussion. And before she does, I just want to remind you all, as you're watching this, please subscribe to the channel down below. You guys have been so great. We crossed 30,200 subscribers as of this recording, which is great. We're moving forward. So please subscribe down below and hit that bell button. All the great content we do here on the Outlaw Nation. Support us by subscribing in that manner and leaving a comment and leaving a like. Laura, I turn the floor over to you.
As Ahsoka Tano finds a certain peace within herself by the end of this episode, we, the audience, are left reeling from all of the exciting elements presented in Part 5, Shadow Warrior. So this episode is spending like an entire season's de-aging budget, like in one go, and we are moving the story forward in massive ways. We're getting live-action Clone Wars. We've got biblical imagery, we've got elements of the hero's journey, and we get a lot of answers about what has been holding Ahsoka back, and we witness her discover a new path forward. So, as I said, I am head over heels for this episode. I can't think of like a single, I can, element that I didn't like. There maybe one or two. But, John, I start with you first.
Yeah.
I go to you for overall thoughts. Was this like the best live action Star Wars has ever been? Or was this a bloated fan service spectacle?
No, I think you could absolutely make a case that this is maybe the greatest episode of live action Star Wars TV ever. I said this before and I'll say it again. Andor is my favorite Star Wars because that's my Star Wars. But this was Star Wars. This is what got everybody into Star Wars back, starting with A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back or with Laura with Rebels. Whatever your entry point was, this episode was reflective of the best of Star Wars, from the mythology stuff, from the Jedi power stuff, the conversations, the lessons, the lightsaber battles, the mystical stuff going on, and friendship. Really, that's the core of Star Wars. Han, Luke, and Leia, right off the bat, it's the friendship thing. Of course, we find out their family later, but it's friendship. And we see here when Ahsoka makes the decision at the end after she's gone through her transformation, she feels a real love and desire to go and find Sabine, and she's going to do everything she can to save her, and says that to her other friend, Hera, in that moment as they split off. So much of this episode is reflective of what we love about Star Wars and the best of Star Wars. And I loved how they used all the different sections of the show to reinforce that and push the storylines even further, and these characters' backgrounds and the mythology even further for us to enjoy. So, yeah.
Exactly. Relationships are huge in Star Wars. This, Rebels was all about found family, and we seem to sort of be like continuing that theme, I think, a little bit. Kevin, what actually was your Star Wars? What was your gateway, and how did this episode stack up for you?
Ewok Adventure, Caravan of Courage is my Star Wars. So Anything
Beautiful.
else? And the Deco, I think his name is Deco, the disco version of the Star Wars Cantina theme.
Oh,
Those
yes.
are my Star Wars.
Yes.
Fair enough.
No, I actually I threw that in one of my KOTOR movies. It was really funny. One of the cantinas, the disco version. But no, it's funny why episode 5s of everything is awesome, right? Episode 5,
Right.
Empire Strikes Back, and now episode 5 of Ahsoka. So I like all Star Wars. I like all the different genres. I like that there's a horror book that you can read about a horror story in Star Wars. I like that Andor is that espionage thriller. I like that Obi-Wan touched on those greater themes between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and how Ahsoka is an extension of Rebels and Clone Wars and a love letter for both. And even Book of Boba Fett. Boba Fett rides a Rancor. So, and I'm not I'm not the apologist for everything Star Wars, but I like that there's Star Wars for everyone. Everyone gets their Star Wars, and I'm just glad that right now the discourse, for the most part, is positive and it's not full of negativity and hate and stuff like that. So I was grinning ear to ear. Again, we were texting in all caps whenever that happens. On premiere night, we know that we're all having a blast, and it's been fun. And yeah, just so happy. I don't want to use the word redeem, but I am so happy for Hayden Christensen. True story. Like back in the day, I put myself in a scene of episode 2. I cut myself in there. If you want to dig, you can find it. I haven't taken it down. I haven't taken it down. Maybe at the end of this episode, I'll hold it up and you can see it. But
wait, is it on
I
YouTube?
released it back in like 2006 and 5 or 2007 or 8. And it was just full of like negative stuff about Hayden and saying like this guy did better than Hayden and stuff. Because again, the discourse back then was a lot different, and now the vocal majority is finally coming at Hayden's aid. And like, I almost want to take that clip down just because like I don't want people thinking I'm trying to do it better than him. I was just doing it to have fun and be silly and be the next Star Wars kid, But I'm just so happy for Hayden, and I firmly believe that this is the best acting of Hayden as Anakin, and I love that he did it with passion and a blending of his and Matt Lanter. You could tell he did his research on it. He was a big fan. He rewatched all of the Clone Wars before he shot Obi-Wan. And I think it was more a primer for these scenes, obviously. And he just knocked it out of the park. There's parts where you're like, again, for me, it used to be so difficult for me to reconcile that Hayden was Matt Lanter. And then, like, you watch all the Clone Wars after episode 2, and then you get to episode 3, and you're like, Matt Lanter is such a different Anakin than the Hayden Anakin, right?
Yeah.
And then it used to be a problem for me because I'm a child of the original trilogy of, like, Under the Mask. That's Hayden under the mask. But Obi-Wan made it where I watched the original trilogy. Now I'm like, no, that's Hayden under the mask from my canon, right? And now he has done such a good job of blending both that like I don't foresee me ever having a problem understanding that he is playing the same character that Matt Lanter did, and Matt Lanter is playing the same character that he did. And for that, A+ on this. This is why I adore this show so much.
Right? I'm like, I kind of feel like if we don't ever get Hayden in Star Wars ever again, it almost might be okay. Like that would be kind of a tragedy because he really knocked it out of the park in this. But I'm also like, man, like this just, it just topped all of it. He slid back into the role like so smoothly. And there's like this kind of subtlety to his performance or parts of his performance that is just, it's phenomenal. It's so great. So it is great to have him back.
And they're going to bring him back for the Apocalypse Now Clone Wars movie with de-aged Hayden, de-aged Ewan. And it's going to be a crazy Clone Wars movie. They're going to be stuck on Lucia in the jungles and with each other's wit. And then you'll have, and we'll get to her later, Ariana Greenblatt.
Yeah.
She'll come back as Ahsoka, and we'll have the ultimate Clone Wars war movie. That's what I want. I've talked about it on the show before. And the more love it's getting, the more chance that can happen. That was like $1 billion.
That's going to be the most expensive movie ever made, just with the
bring it on
exclusively.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can only see that. Yeah.
Let's dive into part one.
I'm fired up right now.
Let's make it happen.
Let's dive into part 1 of episode 5. We open on Seatos, and as 3 X-Wings fly overhead, we see the Ghost parked near the henge, where Hera finds Huyang staring down the cliffside holding Sabine's helmet. He says that he told them to stay together, but they never listen. And it's not too long before we cut to the world between worlds, where we pick up where we left off with Anakin and Ahsoka as she tells him he looks the same and he tells her that she looks old. Perfection. He says that she still has a chance to live and he's here to finish her training. She asks him what the lesson is and he tells her live or die, and then he ignites his lightsaber. Ahsoka tells him that she won't fight him and Anakin says, I've heard that before. And then they proceed to duel. We have to cut back to Seatos again real quick before we can get into the real meat of this. And we've got Carson Teva telling Hera that they are due back to the New Republic, saying that Senator Organa can only cover for them for so long. Hera says that she's not leaving until she knows what happened, and Teva tells her that people are going to start asking questions. Jacen tells Hera that he can feel something out in the water, and he tells her to listen to the waves. With the waves crashing loudly, he tells her he can hear lightsabers. So Hera listens intently. And then she orders Carson to do a sweep near the surface of the water. This confuses Carson, and he gives us a little bit of exposition, and Huyang tells him that Jacen has abilities like his father, Kanan Jarrus, who was a Jedi. I finally got my Kanan Jarrus name drop. That's all I needed. Just needed one. So then Hera leaves Jacen and Chopper at the henge, and she takes off on the Ghost. Carson asks how many times they're going to have to circle, and she tells him to widen his search. Huyang is the co-pilot in the Ghost now, and he tells, let's see, he's surprised that the New Republic changed their mind and approved Hera's mission. She tells him that they did not. She came anyway, but he questions it, saying that maybe the New Republic was right. She's out here chasing Ghost, and he tells her that she does things her way because she cares, and that is why people like her. Then Hera asks if there's any chance that they're going to find Sabine and Ahsoka out here. He says always, especially with Ahsoka. She's tenacious like her master. Jacen then calms in and tells them that Chopper is sensing something and they have to fly lower. So then we cut back really quick to the world between worlds. Anakin and Ahsoka are continuing their duel, which ends when Anakin swings his saber into the pathway and it shatters, sending Ahsoka falling down into the depths of the world between worlds. Kevin, I start with you. The volume has never looked, I think, as good as it does in this. It kind of feels like this is what it was meant for. What are you living for in part one of this episode?
I mean, so much. Like even like the opening, like you kind of knew you were in for it. Like showing like the it was once chaos and now you're up on the henge and there's nothing there, right? And it's like these pieces of equipment and like it shades to me of the two towers, the opening of the two towers. It shows the mountains and you kind of hear faintly the you shall not pass, and it's like revisiting that. And I especially with all the Ahsoka the White stuff later, like I wonder if that was like a direct homage to that. But I was just all for it. Like the number one thing is just to see everything realized in such a way. And yeah, you're right. Like again, like I really did be able to tell a volume, especially like an Obi-Wan show, like when he was on that planet with the airport and stuff like that. Like you kind of just really start to see it in some episodes of Mando. This one, you're right, Laura. I thought that the volume kind of disappeared for me, and maybe that's because we were all like super invested in the story too. I talked to some friends on Scoundrels. They actually got to go to the thing on the big screen, and they said that it's funny. Like I think when you see something on the big screen, it kind of automatically makes it feel more cinematic for them. But like they didn't really mention like that the volume was sticking out. All the special effects really kind of looked good on the big screen like that. So kudos to the effects team, kudos to the cinematographer, and Dave Filoni. Like this episode, does this not get you guys more excited for his live action movie or what?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. He better get the budget that he needs to make that movie happen, because they clearly put a lot of money into this one episode in particular. So I hope that
Hayden looked better in this one. And it's funny, like he got a lot of flack for last week's. And this other one was in the can by then. There's no way they just popped open and they redid the effects. So whether it was a different team or whether it was just, all right, let's make him look more ethereal so people don't know whether he's a ghost or not. But it was on par with like Samuel L. Jackson and Captain Marvel and Michael Douglas, which I think those are the two in the MCU that are really good. The de-aging in Indy, like I just thought, I still love that movie, but it was just a little off the mark. You can just kind of tell, right? This one, it's just it to me told me that they could legitimately do a full movie de-aging. And the other thing is Hayden ain't too much older. You know, if they had Alec Guinness and they were like, hey, we need to de-age you to look like Ewan McGregor, that might be a little more difficult. So but Hayden is kind of still right in that sweet spot anyway. So
Yeah,
look great.
Precisely. John, there's a really great rant that Freddie Prinze Jr. went on one time where he talks about, and this is a positive rant. He talks about droids in Star Wars and how droids are supposed to be this sort of like, you know, the most perfect version of humans. And so when they kind of falter and when they show emotion, it tends to like really hit a lot harder. And I got so much of that from Huyang at the beginning of this episode while he's staring out at that open sea holding Sabine's helmet. Did anything kind of sting out for you besides I mean, the amazing droid portion of this, the amazing visual effects, even some of like the sound editing? We get like the steps in the World Between Worlds kind of sound like they did in Rebels. Truly incredible. What else stood out for you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I mean, Huyang has been like the heart, has been slowly becoming the heart and soul of the show. Not that all these characters don't have real emotion and connection with each other, but Huyang is the truth teller. He is the truth teller, whether you want to hear the truth or not. And it doesn't always have to come out as, how can I say this? As factually as he told Sabine about her abilities as a Jedi and her use of the Force. So he spoke about it truthfully, wasn't trying to hurt feelings. It's just the truth. And when he speaks to Hera in the ship there and says, you do things your way, and you do this because you care. And that's why people like you. Straight up. It's just a truth. And so I like that he serves this purpose in that way, but also you can tell that he's a droid that has these emotions because it's so well done by Filoni to see Hera's point of view come around one of the pillars in the ruins, and he is holding Sabine's helmet, and we see him holding the helmet before Hera does. So we're already reacting before Hera does, and we see the great performance, or we hear rather the great performance voiceover wise from David Tennant as he says, you know, they told him to stay together, and he says it in such a hurt way, and then he says they never listen. That's 25,000 years of Jedi not listening. How many great Jedi has Huyang heard about or witnessed die because, you know, of situations, or they didn't listen, or they didn't do certain things, or they forgot their training in a critical moment? And so that you feel the weight of that in the way David Tennant delivers it. And I thought that was so fantastic. And whichever, I don't know if it's CGI or if it's actual real effects of the robot, whoever's working the controls, it all worked so well to convey the emotion there of what he's going through throughout. And look, I just love that they set the table in these opening few scenes, right? We're going to be in the World Between Worlds. We're going to have these interactions between Anakin and Ahsoka, and then Hera and Teva, Huyang and Jacen are doing the whole thing. And we're diving in more into Jacen's abilities, which I really liked after that line he delivered last week. I have to say, now in context, it makes sense. It's fine. But certainly at the time, I didn't like the line. This now makes sense because he obviously is coming into his form. And I like that it's not something that unsettles him or scares him. It's very natural. He's a kid who's discovering this thing. He's neither over emotional in a happy way or over emotional in a sad way about it. It just is for him. And he's learning how to get in touch with it. He's much more peaceful about it. And even when Hera is doing the mom thing of like, all right, Jacen, okay, give me a second. The adults are talking. Jacen is still insistent on getting her to kind of let go of everything and focus and listen, you know. And I also think they use Jacen to legitimize what Ahsoka goes through in World Between Worlds, because if he can hear the lightsabers, it's actually happening. So that's kind of a cool little way of confirming that this all happened. And Teva, I mean, come on. Carson is the greatest character over these last few series for sure. And I love his matter-of-factness about everything. It's the greatest. When she tells it, or when Huyang tells him that Kanan Jarrus is Jacen's father and he was a Jedi and Jacen is force sensitive, Teva, ever the blue collar, ever the grounded guy, is like, okay, all right, sure, yeah, all right, let's get back up there. And I was like, no, man, it's like, I get it. I've dealt with Jedi. All right, fine. You guys are right more often than you're not. So let's get back up there. So I just loved all of that, and I really enjoyed it. I wish we could get more for Hera to do. That's my only complaint, because I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I love what she's doing, but they got to give her more to do, Laura. It's just so frustrating to watch that.
Yeah,
and about Huyang too, by the way. He's you nailed on the head. 25,000 years, and now he's seen their number dwindled down to like 1 or 2.
Oh, great points.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like think about that. Like the level of I was never a fan of B2 EMO in Andor. I'm like, dude, you hire a droid to do its job, like the Roomba, clean my room, don't cry.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
B2 is my favorite
you get a
character.
coffee machine to make your coffee. You don't get your coffee. You don't want your coffee to be slow on it because it misses Marva.
Oh my God.
But this one, like again, he's just trained Revan, so he's allowed to be sad. Sorry.
Oh my God. People are gonna come for you with that B2 hate. I swear to God.
I love
Sorry, I'll own it. I didn't like the guy knocking over B2. That sucked. Although everybody thought that I'd be stoked about that. No, I was not. That was not true. Just
You'd
do
be
your
cheering
job,
that guy on.
BPMO. Go take out the trash. Don't cry. Thank you.
Jesus.
God. Well, John, you're right.
You start your car. You're running late for work, guys. You start your car and it won't start because it's like, can we talk about Marva some more? Come on.
Anyway.
We should talk about Marva. That's all we should be talking about. No, so John, you talked about Hera's. We talked about Hera's parenting in a past couple episodes, kind of questioning why is she dragging this kid on this adventure that is clearly dangerous. And now we kind of know why. Story-wise, he sort of had to be there,
right?
But he's also a pretty emotionally stable kid for a kid who's got force sensitivity and could go off the rails the same way Anakin could. It kind of makes sense that she would bring him along. He almost kind of grounds everything a little bit for us in the same way that Carson Teva kind of grounds the whole story and sort of brings some of the exposition in. He's kind of almost like the person who hasn't watched Rebels or Clone Wars. He's kind of bringing some of the background information into the story, I think, for the audience, which is great. But I think you're right about Hera. I wish that we had more to do for Mary Elizabeth Winstead in this show. Sadly, I do think this is maybe the last episode we're going to see her in. I don't know if we're going to see her anymore this season. I mean, I'm hoping that this show gets another season, but I think this season we have a lot to do in these last 3 episodes. And I can't help but think that we're going to be sticking in this, this other galaxy for the most part. I don't know. I guess maybe that's my wishful thinking because I want to know more.
Laura, someone's got to defend her to the New Republic. Go ahead. Sorry.
If they go to the other galaxy, I want them to stay there. If you intercut between that faraway galaxy and Coruscant, I think it makes it feel too close together, right?
Too jumbled.
If you're in another galaxy, let's focus and really stay there. And that might help us as an audience to realize, I mean, they're beyond the outer rim. They're beyond the unknown regions. They are literally going to another galaxy with a whole new plethora of things to deal with. And so I think you might be right that we're going to stay with them at least until they come back, which I think, and we'll get to it later, I think they come back at the end of this season and that fleet at Seatos or whatever, Thrawn is going to decimate them. And because you got to establish that he's a major bad. So I think we will see our friends in Hera and all that again. But hopefully, I think we stay in this new galaxy and really focus on it and keep that distance. Make it feel far away, even for us, to be like, oh, we miss Hera. So we'll see.
I mean, someone's got to defend her to the New Republic Oversight Committee. So I feel like you've got to have some kind of scene there. But if you don't, then I wonder if they're spinning off Rangers of the New Republic into from this show, because I mean Jacen, Hera, Zeb, Cobb Vanth, and Carson Teva as your danger rangers. I mean, that's sign me up. And maybe you recast Cara Dune if you want to bring the character back. Sign me up. I'm all for it. And maybe the opening is them having to testify or having to speak and get Hera off the hook there for what happened, or maybe she doesn't have to testify because Thrawn shows up, as Kevin said, and he obliterates that fleet. And then people are like, oh, okay, we understand now. Let's get on it. Let's figure out what all this is about. So who knows?
Kills Hera and Jacen.
Yeah. I just would hate to think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead, this is it for her. I hope there's more.
I know.
But I take Kevin's point about the jumping back and forth. I get that.
Yeah. A lot of jumping back and forth, I think, between, this new galaxy that we've got a lot of world building, I think, to do.
Yeah,
you think about when Star Wars was first a thing, you got to establish all these rules of the galaxy. We got a whole new galaxy to establish rules for. But if I could segue into a place we don't need to establish rules for, a world we don't need to establish rules for, if you will, we return to the World Between Worlds for part 2 of our little episode recap here. So our first venture into the World Between Worlds flashback is a really early Clone Wars flashback. Suddenly we're there. We see clone troopers running by. We see young Ahsoka, played by Barbie's Ariana Greenblatt, waking up in a cloud of pink and purple smoke. Anakin orders troops forward, and when he turns around, we see him in his Clone Wars armor. Hayden in Clone Wars armor. Damn. She tells him that Anakin was one. She tells Anakin that this is one of their first missions. She asks him, "What are we doing here?" And Anakin tells her, "You tell me." And she doesn't understand. He tells her, "That is your problem." And he tells her to keep up. She asks, "What about my training?" And he says, "This is your training." Later, she walks through a trooper camp. Lots of clones are going by on stretchers, and she looks down at one more closely, puts her hand on him, and he covers it with his. It's a very sweet moment. Anakin tells her that the battle isn't over yet. There are more separatist droids coming, and asks her if there is a problem. And she says that the clones were following her orders and she got them killed. Anakin tells her that this is a war Jedi have to lead, and they're going to make mistakes inevitably. And he has to teach her to be a soldier. And when she asks, "Is that all I have to teach my own Padawan someday, how to fight?" He asks her if she really wants a Padawan, and tells her teaching is not what it's cracked up to be. He tells her that teaching her how to lead, he's teaching her how to lead and survive. And to do that, you have to fight. And so she asks, "What if I want to stop fighting?" And he says, "Then you die." So he walks away. He walks towards the explosions, and she watches him go as troopers start to follow him. As the smoke comes into view, Ahsoka watches, and he kind of switches back and forth as the smoke flashes between Anakin and Vader in this wide shot. It's actually really incredible. Yeah. So jumping then next to the next World Between Worlds sequence, which is the Clone Wars Siege of Mandalore, Ahsoka is fighting now with 2 blue sabers in her Clone Wars Season 7 costume. And we actually get a Rex sighting. I think maybe he shows up in the last one too, but he definitely shows up here. We hear him say, "Nice work, Commander."
He's in both.
He is in both? Okay, good.
Phase 1 armor in the first one, Phase 2 in the second one.
That's right, yeah. A lot of people real excited about these different phases of armor. That went right over my head. But anyway, Ahsoka stops. Anakin is behind her in his Revenge of the Sith costume. He tells her that he doesn't know this battle, and she tells him it was the Siege of Mandalore, and they had already parted ways by that point. He tells her that she did well. She's a warrior now, like he trained her to be, and she asks him, "Is that all?" And then they start to argue about legacy. And Ahsoka tells him that my part of the legacy is death and war. And she tells him that he is more powerful and dangerous than anyone realized. He ignites his saber. He tells her, "I gave you a choice, live or die." Her response is no. And he tells her that's incorrect. And they duel. Anakin, by the end of this duel, kicks her really hard and sort of sends her flying backwards into the smoke. Adult Ahsoka then comes flying out of the smoke and lands in the World Between Worlds. And as he closes in on her with his saber, his form flickers from Anakin to Vader. He tells her that she lacks conviction, and she loses her saber at some point in this duel, but ends up getting a hold of his and holds it to his neck. Her eyes flash very quickly to and from yellow, but do go back to normal. And then she ends up throwing the saber over the edge and tells him that she chooses to live. He looks down, and when he looks back up, his eyes are also normal, and he smiles. He tells her that there's hope for you yet. He then disappears, and you can hear rumbling in the distance. Then it starts to snow, somehow from the top and bottom of the World Between Worlds, sort of meeting in the middle, and suddenly Ahsoka is in a pool of water that is coming up higher and higher gradually, eventually swallowing her. Before we wrap up this part, we have to cut back to Seatos, where we see Ahsoka floating in the water just beneath the surface when one of the pilots jumps in, pulls her out. We get another quick clip of Brendan Wayne helping pull Ahsoka out of the water onto the ramp of the Ghost. Ahsoka wakes up saying Anakin's name and then passes out. Jacen stares out at the sunset and smiles as the Ghost approaches with the X-Wings, and Ahsoka's theme plays on the horn, very reminiscent of when Ahsoka died in Twilight of the Apprentice. So this was a lot. This episode doesn't really answer any questions about the World Between Worlds, John. Doesn't really answer any questions about how it works. In fact, it kind of leaves us with a lot more questions, I think, which is maybe how it was meant to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. You know, the biggest complaints people have about World Between Worlds, the Star Wars fans, the fear that they have is that, you know, they're going to cherry pick and use it where it's convenient and change things around to solve story issues, or maybe go, oh, you know what, we didn't mean that 25 years ago. Things like that. But they haven't done that. To their credit, they haven't done that. And I like that. They've used it sparingly, and they've let the rules be somewhat fuzzy and amorphous. So we're not sure how it's going to be used and what it's used for. And I think I said this last week, I think it's connected to, as I said, the tree, I think, in Empire Strikes Back. But also what I didn't mention last week is I also think it's connected to The Last Jedi when we see Rey doing the snap and all the different visions of herself in that mirror. These are all, I think, extensions of the World Between Worlds, magical places around the universe that connect up in some way to the World Between Worlds. And I like that it stays a mystery, but it served the purpose for what Ahsoka needs to serve it for. And Henry Gilroy said that in his commentary about the World Between Worlds, that I think when you walk into the World Between Worlds, it is your experience versus a standard experience that everyone's going to get. This isn't the same ride every time at a theme park. It's a different experience. So you get different things. So, and Anakin even hangs a lantern on it when he says, what do you want? What do you want from this? Like, I can't make a joke, but you want me to be super serious and all this kind of stuff. And so you see him saying, like, what is it you're trying to get? You've got to figure it out, what it is you're trying to solve here. And I think what came through for me, at least when I've watched it, like, I think 3 times now, is it's about, for me, and it doesn't mean this is for everybody. For me, it's about generational trauma. He's essentially saying, which we've talked about more and more in our society, like, she's saying, I don't want my legacy to just continue being death and destruction. I don't want to just have to fight all the time. I was a soldier from such a young age. There's more. There's something more here. And I need to be able to let go of this connection to you in order to be able to break this pattern of the legacy of the masters and the apprentices and all of that stuff that happened with our lineage. And so I think by the end, that's what she learns. And it's the final lesson that Anakin teaches her, because Anakin himself turned to the light thanks to Luke at the end. And so he's essentially going from the beginning of their relationship all the way to the end by saying, you've got to find a way to let this go and choose to live, not die. And choosing to live means choosing the light, going towards the light. And I saw some people pontificate that maybe he is the father of the Mortis trilogy, because as we see in the whole journey with Ahsoka, he's vacillating between dark and light, the dark and the light, the dark and the light. And that's where the father is. And he's bringing his daughter back to the light. Remember that Ahsoka was brought back to life using the daughter's energy, which is the light. So he is like pushing away the clouds so that the Ahsoka that we all love and enjoy can come back into the light. So it was so well done, so emotional. I don't know, I cried like 2 or 3 times in those sections because there's such great chemistry between Hayden and Kevin. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've said some negative stuff about Hayden's acting. I didn't think he was good in the prequels, but here, 20 years of pain, 20 years of people giving him shit, 20 years of like enduring that kind of stuff. It changes you as a human being. And now the re-embracing of Hayden Christensen, seeing so many fans love him again, I'm sure has kind of really inspired him. And so he's delivering really layered, nuanced, strong work that you can enjoy here. And Ariana Greenblatt, just so good as young Ahsoka. So yeah, for me, this entire section was just so moving and so perfect, and perfect Star Wars.
And damn, is he good with that saber?
Oh my, when he's flicking that thing around, staring. Oh my God.
He's a legend with lightsaber combat, man. He works with, with Nick, what's his name? Nick Gillard. He did it with them in the prequels and then with these new stunt people. And he hasn't missed a step. I mean, for me, I just thought of it as he's saying, all right, here's what you get. You get your options. You get to live, which is you move on. Yeah. You move on from this and you forge your own path, or you die, and die is clinging to the past, because he turns on her when she's like, he's teaching her all these lessons. And it seems like early on she's passing these tests. And then at the end, like, you can tell he's even like disappointed as the trainer, the master, when she's like, yeah, but everybody doesn't realize what you would become. And he's like, you still don't get it. We got to go right back to the beginning, because again, you're clinging to the past, and that equals death. And now you're going to die. And that's when he goes full Sith on her. So I thought that was great. I think that a lot of people, you're right, Laura, sometimes they left more questions than answers. I go back to what happened in Harry Potter, and I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with Harry Potter, but in the end, like Harry dies and is like in the afterlife talking to Dumbledore
in the train station.
And Harry says, "Is this all in my head?" And Dumbledore matter-of-factly says, "Of course it's in your head, but that doesn't mean it's not real."
Yes.
So whether this is happening in reality or just in her head, of course, through the hints that Jacen is hearing it, and is Hera hearing it, or is she like when my daughter plays and pretends like she's a robot, and I'm like, "Ooh, look, there's a robot." You know, was she just playing along, or does she really hear it too? Because everybody now in this Filoni verse kind of can attune to the Force. But I think that, like, for me, Anakin is more than a Force ghost, but he's less than a Mortis god. I think I texted you guys this. I feel like maybe he's a hall monitor, like, and they didn't get into it, but like, I basically, and I say that as a joke, but he watches over the world between worlds now, and it might be his penance for, like, hey, you know, you slaughtered school children, you blew up planets, you kind of are a dick, so you don't get to hang out like with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in the commissary. You got to be here doing the rounds all the time, and then maybe you pop in for a visit every now and then. You know, that's what I'd like to think, but I like that we don't know the answer. We don't need him to say, I'm this and I'm that. I think we'll see him again. I think we're going to have a Luke leaning against a tree moment and seeing everybody pop up. I think one more time he's going to say, thumbs up, kid, and that might help us reconcile that this did happen and that he is a Force ghost. So that would be great. And I'm just trying to remember, because we covered so much in this first thing. First of all, I saw in the notes you said Teth or Ryloth. It's Ryloth, because I thought it was Teth at verse 2. I texted you guys that, but upon further review, there are Twi'leks.
They're everywhere. Yeah,
they're fighting. So it's definitely Ryloth, which I thought was just really cool to see. And just their banter, like I said, he emanates his performance of Anakin and merged it with Matthew Lancer, which I thought was great. The Clone Wars armor, like really, like in the cartoon or in the animation, like it doesn't hit you so hard, but when you see him in live action, you realize he kind of has the same shoulder plates as Vader, right? So like, again, that further like really helps like bridge that, like Hayden, is going to eventually be in that suit with all the armor. And let's just give props to young Ahsoka, not only for playing and looking and dead on. Now, she's also from Avengers. Thanos, she's Gamora as a kid. Young Gamora. Right? So, like, I mean, this girl has experience with mentors being homicidal maniacs, but she was able to encompass sorry. She was able to encompass. She not only was young Ahsoka, she was playing old Ahsoka in young Ahsoka's body, and like that range, you can tell that it was the more seasoned Ahsoka in the wrapping of the young Ahsoka. And I'm sure, Laura, you'll get to it. You made me crack up yesterday when you texted us that you appreciate Dave Filoni didn't have her in the season 1 tube top, because no one wants to see a young girl in a tube top in war. But I will say this. Some people were saying that she's too young. I loved that she was young. Dude, there are wars out there where people are thrown rifles and are thrown in the mix and say, go out there and fight and defend your land. And they're 13, 14-year-old kids that are thrown into war. I thought, and I can't wait to watch it with my wife tonight, because I think it's going to really hit her. Like, wow, she was young. Like, this girl was young. Like, and that was the reality of war back then. These Padawans aren't hanging out with Liam in the shades and Coleman Trevor anymore. Rest in peace. Miss you, Coleman. This is that's the dinosaur Jedi, for anyone who doesn't know, that got killed like a punk. But they're not hanging out in the Jedi temple, dude, hanging out at that tree and getting crystals. I mean, they were, but like now they're in war, and they make that war look scary. And he's like, look, you could either sit here and whine about it and you die, or you move forward, which is shades of kind of what he was saying. And just how great is it that, because I watched the Wrong Jedi episode of Clone Wars, how she walked away from him, and that broke Anakin. That bummed him out. He got to finish her training. Like, that is so cool that her training is now done, and she's going to pass on. And she got trained from the greatest Jedi of all time. And now, according to Huyang, she's about to pass on her knowledge to the worst Jedi of all time. And I kind of like that. I like that you go from the top to the bottom, and we'll see what happens with that.
Exactly. There's so much being like so well done in terms of like costume. Even like Anakin's hair in the first scene is like a lot shorter, like his sort of season 1 Clone Wars hair, and gets longer. And we see it when we see him later in Revenge of the Sith. I also kind of noticed like Ahsoka's fighting style changes in the 2 different flashbacks. Like it's a little bit more like chaotic, all over the place, not quite as seasoned in that first flashback. And in the second one, it's a lot more deadly. it's a lot more mature. And you're right, she embodies those two different versions of this character in just the most amazing way. I'm like, I can't believe that you could have been born anytime and you get to be alive when we have 3 fantastic Ahsoka Tanos. There are 3 different ones that exist. They're all amazing. Like, we are lucky, you guys. One thing I wanted to point out, the prequel films really don't make a lot of effort to acknowledge the clones as humans or as individuals. They come off a little bit robotic, and the Clone Wars animated series did a lot to amend that, which I really appreciate. But those that didn't watch the animated series may not have seen that. And I like that they really give the clones that sort of treatment in these flashbacks in that episode, especially that scene where she's walking around the medical camp and holding the hand of the one, like, just heartbreaking. And anyone who watched the Clone Wars knows how close these clones and these Jedi were with each other. But I think if you missed that, like, I'm glad that they slipped that in here, because I think you could have easily kind of brushed right past something like that, like the prequel movies did. I don't know.
Well, what do you think that she's? And sometimes I have to make sure you speak your point of view, because I know you're running out the review. I want to make sure you get your thoughts in on this. And Laura, what do you think he is teaching her? Do you agree with what Kevin and I were saying in different ways, or do you see something else here? Because we have different points of views on this. What's your thoughts on what went on here in this sequence?
Well, I kind of questioned a lot this sort of like, what actually is the lesson here? Because it's not. I don't think it's quite as black and white, and I think they do kind of purposely leave some of it open to interpretation. But it kind of made me think back to like Star Wars Rebels, when we've got Ezra and kind of learning the one last lesson from Kanan, and it's very clear. I mean, that's a show that's made for kids, but it's very clear, like, this sacrifice, this last thing that you have to do, is the most meaningful thing you'll do, and that is the very last lesson that you're going to learn here. And I think sometimes these Star Wars storytellers can get like a little bit lost in the sort of like grandiosity, like, of what is the lesson here. I think The Mandalorian season 3 may have suffered a little bit from that. But I think in this in particular, that, try not to die or live life to the fullest, or let go of your legacy and forge your own. Is it to forgive Anakin? Like, it's not 100% clear, but I think that some of those components are super clear to some people. Some of those things I think stood out to others. So I think that it does kind of leave it open to interpretation in a way that is probably pleasing to some and not so pleasing to others. I questioned it a little bit, but the future is full of uncertainty. So you just have to move forward and see where it goes, was kind of the lesson that I took away from it. Overall, I was sort of pleased with it, where they ended with it.
To add to that, and I kind of sat on this, and I never talked about it on this show. And I forget if I talked to you guys off air, but I've known for months about some of these things, because like the Star Wars Reddit leaks. Sometimes, like, back in the Force.net days, I was looking up spoilers for episode 2. Like, I've always been that way. I've always said, dude, I will have 9 months of nerd out gasms every time I discover something new. It's fun when you're going fresh and you get that 2 hours, but I get 9 months worth, right? So, but one of the things that leaked, and they just didn't shoot it, or they cut it, and I think it's good, because you're already asking a lot of people to know. But like, I wonder, apparently they shot like Mustafar footage of like Ahsoka and Anakin fighting on Mustafar, and the whole lesson that I had heard for months was that Ahsoka was going to find out that no matter what, everything she did, she would still end up to where she is. No matter what, if she beat Anakin would still become Vader. If she faced Anakin, Anakin could have killed her. There was a controversy that there was a dead Obi-Wan a dead Obi-Wan mannequin on the shore banks of the lava, and then there was one where just the robes. Wow. People were like, well, how would he disappear? So they were hoping that they would use the mannequin one, and I like that they didn't use any of it. And then I'm thinking maybe people's wires were crossed, and it could have been interesting if right when he turns bad, instead of kicking her in back, I love that they end up in the World Between Worlds, but maybe before that, instead of that first part of the fight being on Mandalore still, if he would have kicked her again, and then they're all of a sudden on the lava banks and he's fighting her on Mustafar, but that's not part of her memory. She wasn't there, so I get it. But a lot of the rumors were that the lessons was she was going to be taken through the Twilight of the Apprentice again. You'd see her that no matter what, that would still happen with you and Vader. No matter what on Mustafar, if you went in Obi-Wan's place, you would have still failed, because he would have still been, whether she died or whatever. and it was interesting. And I felt that was a lot more on the nose as far as the lesson. And it's taken me a couple viewings now to realize that I think the lesson is more like, and even Anakin is so dismissive. And my friends that went to the screening, they said that remember when Anakin's like, "Oh, you're
starting," just so we're clear, you're starting 7 sentences at the same time, and I need you to finish one of them, Kevin. So
sorry.
Fucking thoughts.
I have so many thoughts here. But the crowd laughed because he's like, "Oh, you're still on that. You're still on that about me being Vader or whatever." So I think the lesson, instead of all that deleted scenes and the business of no matter what, this would have been your destiny. I like that. I believe that the lesson is kind of what Rocha was saying and what you're saying too, Laura. I think that it could be interpretive. Like, we're all the students here. And I think it's either, look, you live and you keep moving. For me, I think it's like you live by, you're going to die if you keep living in the past, or you're going to move on and be, and get past this, including the fact that I became a murderous son of a bitch and all of that. So yeah, there's your wrap up sentence. Sorry, Rocha. I get excited, man.
I know you do. That's what I'm trying to bring you in so we get to the linear thought. But yeah, I mean, and look, we're all going to be different ages. We all have different experiences. The three of us, Laura is a woman, we're men. It's just different interpretations in how we're going through and watching this stuff. So whatever you take, because I'm sure John Rocha at 25 watching this episode takes something completely different from John Rocha at 35. Anyway, I just take something different from it as an older person than I would as a younger person. And I appreciate that about the show. So yeah.
No, it's great. In 10 years, you'll watch it, you'll rewatch it, and you'll interpret something differently then.
Yeah. And I think that speaks volumes about the great stuff. You can always rewatch it at a later age and get something completely new out of it, for sure. Should we take a break here, Laura? We've gone 45 minutes, so we should probably take a break and before we jump into the end of the review here, and we'll do that now. All right, Laura, let's get into the final part of this episode 5.
All right. As the sun rises on Seatos, Ahsoka wakes up aboard the T6. Huyang approaches and tells her, welcome back, and tells her she's been out for one rotation, and that she would have been out longer if it weren't for Jacen. Ahsoka asks about Sabine, and Huyang hands her a half of the broken map ball, saying that she hoped that she could explain exactly what happened. Ahsoka now is also wearing this white cloak blanket thing. When she comes out to the henge where Jacen and Chopper are playing, Jacen hugs Ahsoka, and she already seems a little bit warmer than her old self. And Jacen tells her that he heard her fighting. He asks who she was fighting with, and that's when Hera interjects and asks Huyang to take Jacen to check out the Jedi starship. Jacen asks Huyang a bunch of annoying questions, and we see them walk away. Hera asks Ahsoka where Sabine is, and Ahsoka uses the broken map to sense the impression/memory of Sabine's conversation with Baylan. So now she knows that Sabine went with them and was alive when she left. Hera says that they have to go after them, and Ahsoka tells her that it's not that simple. And that's when Carson comes up and tells him that the fleet is on the way. He doesn't think that they're coming to help. And Hera says that she will deal with that. And she tells Ahsoka to find a way to find Sabine. At that moment, Ahsoka looks down at Sabine's helmet and then up at the sky, and she hears the Purrgil. So we cut to the ghost really quick. The Chancellor asks Hera if she has Morgan in custody or if she has any evidence of Thrawn's return. Hera says no to both. And she says there's no more that they can do. Mon Mothma orders her to return to Coruscant with the fleet. And then Ahsoka enters the cockpit and tells her that she knows how to find Sabine. So then we cut to Ahsoka's Jedi starship taking off with the Ghost and the 3 X-Wings. The 3 X-Wings break away. A pod of Purrgil come into view, and one of them is supersized that comes out of the clouds. And Ahsoka says, yep, that one will do. And she climbs out onto the hull of the T6. 3 of the New Republic cruisers approach Seatos at this point, and Carson has to stall them. He tells them to maintain their distance. Back with the Purrgil, Jacen is in awe and comments that it's just like the stories Hera told him. The Purrgil took Ezra and the bad guys far, far away. We have to give Jacen all the silly, tacky lines. Sorry, Jacen. Ahsoka reaches out with the Force, and the whale starts to open its mouth. Ahsoka tells Huyang to fly in, and she comes back inside the cruiser. At that point, the Jedi cruiser kind of turns around and backs its ass up into the mouth of the whale, which is fun. It closes the whale closes its mouth, and now we're just in darkness. And Huyang asks if she is certain that that the whale knows where Sabine is, and Ahsoka tells him, "I have no idea. We will just see where it goes." Huyang questions this and says that we could be going anywhere, and she says, "I know. That's better than going nowhere." At that point, the ghost flies ahead of the whales. Hera contacts the New Republic fleet and tells them to get the hell out of the way, and the Purrgil start to buffer. And Ahsoka tells Hera that she's sorry she can't make the trip, and Ahsoka says, "Hera, I will find them, I promise." Hera tells her, "May the Force be with you." They jump to light speed, and we cut to black. And just pure devastation. It never occurred to me that like Hera would ever sit this mission out. And I'm kind of sad, but I'm also kind of fine with it. I got my Hera fix. I got to see her with Jacen. I'm satisfied. And I'm kind of on to the next adventure, I guess. I'm excited to see what's next. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this last episode, or the last part of this episode here, and as we are taking off into hyperspace with the Purrgil?
I really liked the arc with Ahsoka. An episode ago, she was looking at Sabine saying, "Can I count on you to do the right thing?" And the right thing might be to destroy that map and say, "Kiss your chances of seeing Ezra goodbye, because this is the way to stop Thrawn." But then at the end of this episode, she's telling Hera, I will come back and find them. I will bring them back. I promise." Like, she is now, whether it's Ahsoka the White because of her trial by fire, and now she came out on the good side, she's trusting in the Force. She has that pep in her step. She's kind of smiling.
Yeah.
She kind of sits in that cockpit and really is like coming into her own again, like how she used to be. And I really love that. And I just thought that this last like 2 minutes, 5 minutes were so full of hope, right? And she beat that trial, and again, that full circle from the moment last week to this moment where she's like, "No, I'm gonna find them." And I don't know, we might end up, I don't know, at the Jack in the Box off 3rd Avenue, or we're going to end up where Ezra is. Either way, it's going to be all good. Don't worry, Huyang. Let's go out there. And I fear that Huyang will not be making the return trip that everybody else will.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes,
I am
again.
now more into that than ever. But yeah, the Purrgils were great too. It made me think that like a lot of the ship designs for Mon Calamari ships are very whale-like looking, and I wonder, you know, in my head canon, I'm thinking that maybe the designs, like it's such a legend of these hyperspace ships or hyperspace whales, that then they were like, well, we're going to design the ships kind of in their image, kind of like, you know, how planes, like, you know, with the side of like with the eagle faces painted on, stuff like that. But the hell of an ending. I like that you end right at hyperspace. We don't know, they're not going to go and do a teaser with what's going on out there. That's for next. Like, that wrapped everything up. And we don't know anything that's happening now. Like, we have like 2 shots left from that trailer compilation of like what's left. We got so much new Star Wars that none of us, it's forcing us, like my spoiler ass, which would be watching the trailers and behind the scenes. I know nothing. And I like that they're forcing me to do that because it's a new experience for me.
Yeah. Right, exactly. I mean, that actually kind of, the whale comparison to the ship actually kind of makes sense. It sort of like makes sense that it doesn't make a lot of sense to me why the New Republic would send 3 cruisers out here on a non-mission to chase down Hera and Ahsoka. Like, what a waste of gas, it seemed like, to get all the way out there. It just is. But I like that sort of comparison. They were sort of in harmony there for a minute, which is kind of surprising because in Rebels, Hera spends a decent amount of time bitching about how Purrgil get into hyperspace lanes and they basically are like drunk drivers in these hyperspace lanes, and pilots end up dying because they crash into these whales that don't know that they're in the way. So this was really interesting and kind of this great connection back to Rebels, to sort of see them all moving around in this harmonious way, not crashing into each other. So I appreciated that. John, what stood out to you at the very end of this episode here?
Well, Ahsoka the White. I mean, just her coming into this new interpretation. Look, we've all, you know, if you get to a certain age, we've all been through a period in our lives where we're navigating something that's affecting us, right? It's something that's holding us back or hurting us, or we can't figure it out. Maybe it's getting a new job. Maybe it's getting a new career path. Maybe it's getting out of a relationship and finding a new relationship. Maybe it's putting the damage of the old relationship, finally coming to terms with it through therapy and whatever, and you're able to embrace a better existence. And I think that's what you see here. And the Ahsoka that people were clamoring for in the first 4 episodes, like, we're such a culture now where like, why isn't it all happening in 1 week? It's like, we got to be patient in what these creators are going towards. And look, you may not have liked the process even now after episode 5. I did. I liked that we got a harder edge Ahsoka who was a little more caught up in the things of the past. Clearly, the guilt over Anakin has been weighing on her and has kept her at a distance from everybody else because of the pain and the guilt she feels about that. And then the future of Thrawn and the future fear of Thrawn coming. So these are two negative entities that are ripping her apart because they're taking her attention in both sections, and she's not fully focused on the present. And that's what essentially you get here is an Ahsoka that now understands that she needs to be focused on the present. She needs to savor and appreciate the people in her life. I mean, how she greets Jacen versus how she greeted Jacen, like her bending down and being really caring with him and hugging him. And you can tell there's a lightness to Ahsoka now. This is the Ahsoka people wanted to see. And you have to trust that the actors and the directors and the creators have a process for a character. And now she's come through this and she's dealt with the trauma of the stuff with Anakin, and she's embracing it. Nothing encapsulates that more than when Huyang, as you mentioned, Laura, asks him, how do you know that they know where they're going? And she's like, I don't, but we're going to chill out and hang out and see what happens. And I love that. She's going with the flow. And that may upset Huyang because Huyang's very much a regimented guy, but it's great to see that from her. And man, that scene when she's communing with the Purrgil, that is badass. I know her flying around in the spacesuit and kicking ass on that was cool. Her on the wing of that plane, of that ship, and then communing with the Purrgil was an awesome situation. And Teva again saying, I'll tell you, but you're not going to believe me. It's really funny stuff here. And then the end with her and Hera. That's friendship, right? I'm sorry you can't come with us, but I will find them. I will find them. There's a real kind of like, trust me, I'll take care of it. And Hera completely believing in her, seeing the change, saying, may the force be with you, because now she's fully on board and supporting Ahsoka. So to me, this ending was so great. So great. And I'm so looking forward, as Kevin said, that we got all this new Star Wars to discover in these next 3 episodes, other than a couple of those Thrawn shots that we have from the trailer. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what we're going to get now.
Yeah, we kind of see Ahsoka taking the best parts, I think, of Anakin's legacy. And
yes.
Anakin cared deeply for his friends and would do anything to save the people that he loved. And that is what she's on her way to do, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Any fear for either of you that this show will make like a Book of Boba Fett and bring Din Djarin into the story for the last 3 episodes? Any question of it?
Was that your tweet? I think
that was me.
It was you, yes. Oh man, they're just gonna have an aside and be like, all right, we're gonna just go, yeah. And then I like that someone wrote Boba Fett, like did a picture of Boba Fett, like, no, this guy's coming for the episode. That would be an equal trade if you get Boba Fett on his Rancor.
I don't think
I think we're going to I think we're going beyond now, and I think we're gonna say bye to Hera, at least for an episode, and it will be all that. But I do think Thrawn's coming back, and those poor bastards at Seatos, they're done. They're done. We got to establish Thanos here. We got to establish why Thrawn's so scary, and he's going to do it by probably being outnumbered but not outwitted. Because if everybody knows about the novels, he was a genius. He was a military tactician.
You talk about the New Republic fleet that he's going to wipe it out.
That New Republic fleet, they're still over there, I bet. So
Captain Gerard, we hardly knew ye. Yeah, exactly. yeah, I can see that. Absolutely, him showing up and just absolutely decimating. I do think there's a possibility. Zeb, I think we got to lead to the Filoni movie. So maybe there is something after the devastation of what he does where they all kind of get together and they're like, we got to go take care of this guy. And that leads us into the movie. But yeah, I imagine that's what's going to happen. So I don't think we'll see Boba or the Mandalorian or anybody until Bo-Katan until the end of this show, if we even see them. And I personally don't want to, but if we do, I hope it's not till the end of the show. Yeah.
I was hoping for a Bo-Katan sighting in the Siege of Mandalore. So many people were just like, oh, I can't believe we didn't see Maul. I'm like, fuck, screw Maul. I was like, I just wanted to see Bo-Katan. But no, it's fine. It's fine. I can go without. And yeah, I'm in the same boat. I kind of like, let's stick with the story that we're in. Let's stick with Ahsoka's story, the show that's named after her. Let's stay with her. That would be great.
For anyone worried about that Mandalorian that was stabbed by Ahsoka, we are in the Filoni movies that Mandalorian lived. So got stabbed. They bandaged it up. She was back fighting the next day. Don't worry about a lightsaber stab. in the Mandoverse, they're all good.
Exactly. Well, John, you wanted to talk about music in this episode, which I think is a great idea because it really stands out. It was very, very strong. Kevin Kiner absolutely just like outdoing himself with the score in this particular episode. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan played great every night, but Michael Jordan had those games, right? And they were like, those are the games that you identify with him the most. The flu game or the 6 3-pointers in the first half kind of game. We know that. And I know I'm talking sports, so maybe I lost somebody, but I just mean like the great ones show up in certain moments, and those are the bookmarks or the hallmarks of why they're great. They're always consistently great, but then there's that one thing or a few things that really kind of signify how great they are. And I think with Kevin Kiner, he really stepped up to the plate for the music in this episode. I think he understood what Filoni was going to do. I'm sure they had to plan that they were going to release this in the theaters quite some time ago. So Kevin wanted to compose music that would work in a theater as well as if you're watching it at home in your home theater. And I think he did a wonderful job. And for me, there are a lot of great cues, but my favorite was when Ahsoka is communing with the Purrgil. That moment when she is on the wing of that ship and the majesty of the size of that Purrgil opening its mouth and the music like really hitting this crescendo at that moment just showed you the scope of what was happening here, the large scope of what was happening here. And so there's just so many great music cues throughout this episode that I immediately went, I've got to buy the soundtrack when this is all over. And I don't always do that. So I was really excited about that. So yeah. What did you guys think? What's a cue that worked for you guys? Is there a favorite cue?
Mine actually kind of builds on yours, so I'm gonna go with yours. So the that music cue, I've always kind of, and if we're talking about the same one, which maybe we're not, it reminds me a lot of the sort of, and I don't know what the name of the title is in Rebels because we didn't get the Rebels 3 and 4 soundtracks. Why we didn't, I don't know. I will never stop screaming for them. I need to have them. But there's basically a music cue in the finale of Rebels I just call it Ezra Surrenders. And it's just this fantastic piece of music from that particular episode. And there's a sped up version of it in this episode that they use on a couple different occasions. I think one of them is kind of with Ahsoka when she's, I think it's right around the time that she comes back into the ship after she's been communing with the Purrgil. So maybe not right at that exact moment. But then it sort of kicks up as they're actually inside the Purrgil and getting ready to jump into hyperspace. That piece of music just builds and it ends up kind of playing us out of the episode. But the two pieces of music, like really, they're not exactly the same. I can't tell if maybe like one's in a major key and one's minor. I don't know. But I know that the version that's in Ahsoka is like a sped up version of this particular piece of music that I just love from Rebels. So fingers crossed we get those soundtracks someday. We don't have them yet. Kevin, what stood out to you? What pieces of music which cues stood out to you in this episode, which was just incredibly strong in terms of music?
Yeah, I called dibs on it when we were texting about it. I was like, oh man, I got to talk. Like anytime you hear a new iteration of the Force theme, I just get excited. From The Force Awakens, when Maz Kanata's talking about it, to, my favorite iteration is like with Luke and the funeral pyre at the end of Return of the Jedi. That's great, right? It's so good. So to hear it and it was focused on Jacen, just really got those emotions cooking for me. You know what I mean? It's just it screams Star Wars. And like I said, any iteration of the Force, I hope they have the soundtrack because I will buy it. I will download it. I will use it in my KOTOR movies. I'm ready to use it. So that was definitely my favorite. And I agree. I really thought that was cool that you were pointing out those the similarities to those Rebels moments too. That's great. Kevin Kiner's great.
Yeah. I feel like I've been clamoring for a Kevin Kiner score with all of these new live action shows we've gotten. Every single one that's come out, I've been like, but why not Kevin Kiner? And I get it now. They were saving it for this, which was the correct decision. They needed to save the Kevin Kiner score for this show because there was nobody else that could possibly do this show as well as he's doing. So I'm really happy that they sort of saved it for this because it's been so good so far, and I can only imagine it's going to get better. But yeah, if they do what they did with The Mandalorian, we'll probably get episodes 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 will get like a soundtrack of that, and then they'll release the rest of them later. So I'm hoping that comes out soon.
I'm sure people are going to demand it, like especially with some of these tracks. And I like that they didn't overly. I mean, my problem with the Kenobi movie was that they didn't go to some of the themes, but I never wanted it wall to wall. If you ever watch my Kenobi edit, like it's very sparse, but we just remind people of some of what these themes are. We play Across the Stars when they're talking about Padme, like, but not overly. It's like done in such a way where it was interwoven with it, right? And I liked that, like, when Anakin was turning bad, they weren't playing. They had little notes of a Battle of the Heroes, but, like, it wasn't, like, just blaring the Darth Vader theme the whole time. That's not what it was about. This was about Ahsoka and her battles. And I like that they were able to kind of just blend some of the old with some of the new. And it's fantastic.
Very well done. Incredibly well done. John, any final thoughts on this episode, Part 5, Shadow Warrior of Ahsoka?
You know, you got to trust creators, and we built to this episode. And I saw some people say, imagine if they had done this in episode 2 or 3. And I'm like, no, it wouldn't have had the effect that it has here because of the journey we've been on. So for me, I thought this episode was incredible. I thought we built to it really well in the first 4 episodes. And I enjoyed going back into these worlds and seeing live action Clone Wars stuff, which was so fun to see overall. And then by the end, a bunch of lessons are learned. And we have now a different point of view and a different vibe and energy that we're going into for these next 3 episodes. And that excites me. And so for that, they accomplished their task. They entertained me and they got me excited for what was to come. You can't ask for much more from that with a show. So yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Exactly. Kevin, what's got you excited to come, and any final thoughts on this episode?
I think we'll see Hayden again, but I'm glad that I got that satisfied the itch. And now I really want to just focus on the level of guilt Sabine's probably going to feel when all this goes down. And let's not forget, like, this show, like, my wife and I talked about it. Like, everybody's likable, right? Hera's so likable, Chopper, Jacen, like, Sabine, like, even the villains, Baylan, right? What's a show that everybody was likable? Ted Lasso, right? Ted Lasso, even the villain in season 1 was likable. And we were joking about how this show, Ahsoka, is like Ted Lasso in space. So I'm just looking forward to seeing the villains. I'm really obsessed with what Baylan's endgame is. Is he trying to get to the world between worlds because he wants to stop Order 6 from happening? Order 66 from happening? Because he talks about how, and I rewatched Twilight of the Apprentice before watching the episode last night. And there's someone that tells Sabine, like, no, you don't understand. In the world between worlds, anybody who has it will have ultimate power of time and space. A line that's similar to that. And, like, if Baylan knows about that and knows that Ezra has been there, maybe his goal is to get to Ezra, to take him to the world between worlds. So he falsely believes he can just hop into a timeline and fix it all. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, my friend. We're going to find that out. So I'm excited to revisit my buddy Baylan and see where it comes from there. I'm excited.
Yeah, you mentioned Sabine. I mean, when they jumped to hyperspace, when she left with Morgan and company, I think that she may have thought that they, like, took Hera out. I mean, they just blew right past the ghost and kind of jostled it. But from her point of view, it may have seemed like they actually, like, destroyed that fleet that came to actually block their path to hyperspace. So yeah, I imagine there's going to be a lot of guilt on Sabine's part. But if you had told me, like, in 2017 that I would be this excited to see Ezra Bridger again, under no circumstances would I've ever believed you. I'm so excited to see Ezra. I had gone into this show thinking, like, those little clips we got in the trailer were all we were going to see. Right. And maybe it will be. I don't know. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to get Ezra content, and I'm pumped.
Here's why I love that actor, too. In the Holo, he does this. Someone on Twitter mentioned it.
Yeah, he does.
His head, and then they show that he does that all the time in the animated. That's why I'm
Ezra
excited.
Body language.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 5, Shadow Warrior of Ahsoka. Thank you all so much for joining us, whether you're watching us or listening to us. Remember, we are a podcast feed on the Outlaw Nation Podcast Network, the Jedi Way. All the episodes, you can find it there on the Outlaw Nation Podcast Network, so please subscribe to that. Kevin, another fun show. Please let people know where they can find you, brother.
You can find me in episode 2, Attack of the Clones, Smets edition.
Oh my God!
Look at that punk! Look at that punk in his face.
And it's like,
look at that.
It's like it was like a bed sheet. Let's be honest, it's ridiculous. So You got about like 10 minutes to find it because I'm probably gonna make it hidden at this point.
Don't you dare! Oh my god.
But yeah, you can find me. We had a great time. I told you last week I merged all of my KOTOR content into one super movie, 6 hours and 55 minutes worth. And we had a live premiere. I was working throughout the day, but like just in the chat all day. Fans were there all day long, like enjoying it. It felt like a marathon movie before a big premiere. And it's like got over like almost 8,000 views, which is not viral per se, but like for something that's like a re-release of old 2003 video game footage put together as a movie, I'm pretty proud about that. So there's going to be a lot more fun things to do on our channel for that. And I was really happy about that. So RevanTrilogy.com. You can find all that KOTOR and Revan content there, and there's plenty more to come. And thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking shop with my two favorite Star Wars compatriots.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Compatriots.
That's very sweet. You say that to all the compatriots. Laura Kelly, another fun show with you, Laura. Please let people know what you got going on as well.
Sure. Come find me on Twitter and Instagram at @shutup_Laura. And you can find my other show, Force Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour, on all major podcast platforms. Alice and I have the most ridiculous conversations on that show. Episode 3 came out recently. That one was no different. We did briefly talk about the new anthology books that are out, both the High Republic Tales of Light and Life and the new Revenge of the Sith from a Certain Point of View novel. So you can find that anywhere you get podcasts.
Return of the Jedi, right?
Return of the Jedi. I'm sorry. I don't know what I said.
Yeah, you said Revenge of the Sith, so I just wanted
My bad. Return of the Jedi. You're right.
Oh, wow. Shout out, Laura. You finally changed it to social and projects, of course.
Of course.
Now.
As for me, at the Rocha Says, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, Yellow Nation on Twitch. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button. Get us to 50,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Hope you've been enjoying the content. The numbers are going up on our reviews, so thank you very much to everybody who's coming back every week to enjoy, and the new people who come on to sample our points of views on this stuff. We appreciate you all madly. It means a lot to us. All right, Laura, what do we have to tell them before we head on out of here?
Until next time, remember, your focus determines your reality.
Take care, everybody.